Welcome to Mystic Moon Cafe.
So wonderful to be here tonight in this lovely, lovely rainy day. I don't know how it is across the nation, but that's the way it is in Seattle. And I have my ghosty co-hosts, is that hostess with,
Hostess.
male, female, hostess,
Hostess.
Wendy and Jake.
Howdy, folks.
Hello.
I'm great. How are you guys doing today?
It's a Pinot Gris episode tonight.
Yes.
Oh dear.
I understand. Yes, I had one of those days too. I'm saying, shake it off. It's okay. Everything's good. How about you, Wendy?
Of all the days I've ever had, it's one of them.
That's a nice thing. I'm just glad you got through it.
Yep.
That's right. We all survive, so that's the best thing in the world.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
But Jacob and I and Sandy, we had a very amazing experience this last weekend. We actually unofficially, I'll put that in there, investigated Thornwood Castle in Pascoma in Washington.
Ooh.
I'm saying unofficially because, they really, how do we put that, Jake?
Thing.
But it was an awesome, awesome night because hardly anybody was there.
Mm-hmm.
And they opened a lot of the doors to the different rooms, and we got to go in and do an EVP session in each of the rooms. And the apartment we were staying at actually had some activity. And it was amazing.
It was probably the most active spot in the entire property.
Isn't that bizarre? It's the... Yes, because it's the apartment right next door to the castle.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, that was very strange, but that's where we got the EVPs. I thought I got a couple things in the castle, but I had to rule it out. It just wasn't clear enough. But so, unfortunately, but it was very strange that the most active things we got was in the apartment next door to the castle.
That was built in the 70s, and it's obviously built in the 70s, but well maintained.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
it's
very well maintained. Yes.
Definitely some Brady Bunch stuff going on in that apartment.
Yes.
Gold shag
It was
carpet.
very nice.
Pretty much.
Was it gold? I was trying to think.
It was gold.
Yes.
Yeah, so I just speculate is all the ghost hunters spend all their time in the castle, that the ghosts are like, F you, man, I'm heading out to the patio on the other side.
But we did some really interesting experiments that night. Mm-hmm. And Jake is, where basically you put headphones on and you listen to, we're not a big fan of the ghost box or spirit box. We think it's very too suggestive, but it's kind of fun to do experiments with it sometimes just to see, because sometimes we think that a lot of, spirits may try to contact you through the white noise, if anything. So, but we did that experiment, and then we did another experiment with only white noise to see if something would manipulate the white noise into sound to try to just talk to us. Mm-hmm. So we had earphones on, and we in a blindfold, so we didn't see anything, and the white noise was so loud that we did not hear when someone was asking us questions. So Sandy was asking me questions, and I didn't hear her, and I was hoping that something would manipulate the white noise. But it's one of those things, am I having audio matrixing, which means am I making something out of the white noise, or am I really hearing something? Because there were several times I kept thinking I was hearing like something trying to speak to me, and I kept asking, are you trying to speak to me? And Jacob, you want to say what we got? Yeah,
so during the white noise experiment that June was doing, we got phantom footsteps, and they were really,
it almost
really
sounded
clear.
like little,
they sounded like little kid feet. So the
Yeah.
reason why I kind of picked that if I could talk, right? The lakeside apartment was simply because it's a little bit off the castle, so you don't have to worry about, people walking by while you're doing your EVP session and stuff like that. But that area is known for a little boy that had drowned in the lake just in front of the apartment. So I'm like, let's just give this a whirl. And it really sounded like, if you've seen Pet Sematary, when Gage runs down the hallway.
Yes, it really did.
Sounded like that.
And there's
Oh,
nobody else
boy.
around us. There's no one else around us at all. We are alone there.
Yes.
There's no one around us.
And then,
And it was in the apartment.
and there were some direct responses to the questions. One of them was a female's voice. And Sandy had been asking about who was there. And there's a female voice EVP that says, behind you. And then the other question was, tell us your name. And it answered, a male's voice answered, Mark.
Or Marcus. I thought it was more, like it was something like
Mark.
that.
There was
It might have
Mark.
been
I got
Mark,
Mark for sure came out of it.
Yeah.
And then when we were doing the Estes method, it's called, which is where you let the spirit box go through go through AM frequencies and stuff to spell out words. And we did get some direct answers in that. But again, that could be completely random. However, they were, who unscrews the light bulbs? And the name was Doug. And then asked about if it was the little boy. And it went into, you got me, daddy, I died. Like all back to back.
It was really bizarre, yeah.
Right after that.
Wow.
And then the rest of it was just a crap shot, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
it was probably just random. But it was.
This is why we don't usually do the spirit box is what they say, and that's where they take a radio and they go through different stations, and supposedly the spirits are supposed to pull out words to contact you. But scientifically that would be very, very difficult. Well, except that one time we tried to do that, and it was on some really, really strong evangelical station.
Oh yeah. When we did that in Spooked, I hit the Hellfire and Damnation channel.
It kind of scared us. All of a sudden, demon.
Yeah, kill, Hellfire, bomb, plague.
I was like, maybe we should try to do another stations. These are a little scary.
Going back to Thornwood, right before we bring on our guests, because it's not about us, we want to get our guests on.
Oh, yes.
But I will say we
not
did have personal experiences in the movie room. I got pinched on my leg 3 times, back to back to back. Because I was being a snarky little son of a bitch making fun of the Boo Buddy, and I guess it was a kid that was not happy with me doing that, but whatever.
And the Boo Buddy, little teddy bear. Yes, the Boo Buddy is this teddy bear that's just, I love this teddy bear. If anything comes close to it, it'll say, what are some of the things it says with all the different things? Like if anybody touches it or
Yeah, so if it picks up motion, vibration, something like that, it'll say, that tickles, do you want to hold my hand? Or it'll just giggle. Other times it'll say, ooh, I'm cold, or it's chilling here, or did you make it warm? If it detects temperature, which I call BS on that because it does that 0.2 of a degree. Come on, you can breathe on it. But it'll give you, and then it goes into just random questions for EVP. Like it goes A, B, C, D, E, and wants you to do the alphabet or it counts, stuff like that, just to see if it can elicit a response. I love my Boo Buddy. It's the best investigator.
Yes, I love it too. It is amazing.
I have to keep it away from the dogs. They just keep eyeing
yes.
me like a gut you. Like a
that
fish.
Would be one of the most expensive dog toys that
No
you have probably ever
crap.
bought.
Let me tell you. Boo. Boo will set you back. I might as well get a Teddy Ruxpin.
Yeah, exactly. And it's more than a Teddy Ruxpin, I hate to tell you.
Yeah, true that.
But anyway, okay, without further ado, let's bring on our wonderful and amazing guests, Jennifer and Maxwell. I thought maybe we would like to, sorry, my mind just kind of was going in a million different directions. But
Suburban.
Yes. That was just the Irish cream in my coffee. But I thought we'd like to actually start off by you both telling something about yourselves and your whole life. How would you like to start at the beginning? How about Jennifer? It's like if you would like to. We'll say
like
this
hot
is
seat. Share with the group.
If you'd like to, kind of start off, telling about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Page, co-host of Odd Tonic, which is why we're here tonight. A little bit about myself, my background. I'm known for being a genre actress. I love doing sci-fi, fantasy movies, gaming movies. I'm a big gamer. As well as I'm an artist and I do cosplay and costuming. And I'm also a professional tarot reader and palm reader, as well as a part-time mermaid.
That's awesome.
I need to book you for my next corporate event.
Perfect. Yeah, all those things.
That's awesome. And now we have Maxwell Holechek.
That's right. I am Jen's co-host on the Odd Tonic podcast, and I do none of the things that Jennifer does.
We're diversified. We're diversified.
You don't want to see me in a mermaid tail.
That's why we are here tonight, though.
But our backgrounds and our abilities are a great match on Odd Tonic. Jen comes from a background where she is very crafty and in front of the camera, and I come from a background where I am also crafty and behind the camera. I have a degree in film and video production. I also have a background in theater. Both of those together actually did me quite well when I moved to Seattle over 20 years ago to pursue a career in software development. Specifically, I really wanted to get into children's entertainment. One of the things I loved about children's entertainment is that not only at the time in the late 90s, early aughts, were some of the best titles, best entertainment out there were for kids, because you were still able to be really whimsical in a way that you didn't see in a lot of adult titles. And you could also write it in a level that, well, you could write it on two levels, where the kids thought it was great, but then you could slip in a few jokes that only mom and dad would get. And there were a couple of companies in Seattle at the time that were really making some of the best children's software at the time. And I moved out here just to work with one of them. And that's what I did. And so that started my career in Seattle tech for a while, and that's how Jennifer and I eventually met, working at Wizards of the Coast.
Oh,
and
D&D.
Yes.
Yeah. And for a few years, we knew that we wanted to work on a project together.
We thought it would be film.
Yeah, we really did, due to our backgrounds. And
then we realized that was nuts.
Right. Because film, as you know, is a bit expensive. It takes a whole crew to get it together. It's very time intensive. And with the other obligations that we had at the time, it was just impossible to get something going. And then we had the idea for Odd Tonic, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, we thought podcasts, it's audio. Cut out all the video. Audio podcast, easy.
Well, it's an amazing show. I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. So yeah, you guys do an incredible job. But one thing I'd really love to know is, how long does it take you to put an episode together?
Well, let's see. We do research and writing for at least a week.
Mm-hmm.
Recording is actually, when we actually sit down to record, that's actually the speediest part of the process, don't you think?
Yeah.
And then, so we'll record usually in a day, maybe break it up into two, and then spend a couple of days, depending on the complexity of the episode and how much polish Maxwell feels is just you need in the episode. It could take quite a bit of time and commitment for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he puts on his producer hat and really make some magic there.
I'm a perfectionist. That's what she's politely trying to say. Perfectionist.
I understand.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, for the majority of it, it's a two-person produced podcast, and I've gotten in. This is the first time I've done any really audio editing work, and Maxwell's taught me the ropes on doing the voice, helping with the voice edits, and then from there,
She's a natural.
I'm sure.
I was there. I know how we talked. That's all. Really.
I mean, just putting the music in and everything like that, and especially, I like how you put on the sound effects and the music and everything.
I was gonna, and this must be the film background, because when I listen to it, I'm like, you know, I know this is a podcast, but it's almost like a radio drama. Like you took lore and made it atmospheric and cinematic. You know,
it's a production.
We want to draw people in and really make them feel like they're here in the parlor with us, because we are here and, you know, we're talking to our guests, and we just want to make it as immersive as possible, because we're just so passionate about the subjects we cover, and we just really want that to come across, and we really want to share as much richness as we can with our guests.
And speaking of the subjects, I don't think we've broached that yet, just in case someone who is listening is not familiar with. Oh,
yes, please.
Yeah.
We cover weird history, strange science, and the paranormal. And we record here in our parlor, which is an actual.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we do drink tea while we are recording. It's not just a part of
I
the
drink wine and music. Everyone has their bevy of choice up if for listeners out there.
I would have to say, between the three subjects, we tend to maybe lean toward the latter, into the paranormal. And I think part of that is due to, we love to hear our listeners' stories, submitted stories to us. And we are blown away every episode that we are doing, the listener episodes, just by the wide spectrum of experiences that people are having out there. And it's just incredible. You were talking about us trying to bring a lot of cinematic qualities to the podcast. You don't have to work that hard when you're dealing with some of these stories. They are just right out of a movie. Down to the atmosphere and the tension, and sometimes they go in directions that you don't expect. And
they're so unique.
They really are.
You know, the more you hear these stories, just the bigger the world gets, and it's just amazing how, you know, you ask anyone and someone is bound to have a story that they just can't explain. And yet we try to shove it all under the rug, like life is normal and predictable and just your daily commute, you know.
Don't take me out of my comfort zone.
I was going to say, life is easier if monsters don't exist.
Yeah. So,
yes.
It is about where you put your attention and where you look, but it's pretty fantastic.
I know June and I are putting a boogeyman tales from around the world together. And I've reached out to some of my international type friends, and it almost makes me kind of laugh, because the only two that have gotten back with me are both from South Africa. And we're looking for all over the world, but I don't know exactly how to reach out and say, hey guys, get a hold of us. We want your stories. We want even if it's just the different names that it's done under, and different regions of the world. That would just be, and audio, video, or just write it down and we'll read it out.
And what qualifies to you as, like, I have my version of what I think a boogeyman is. What do you think your version is?
Basically the devil under the bed or in the closet waiting to get you. If your feet hang over the side of the bed.
So on my side, so I'm on my blog, so I do ghostly activities as my blog. And I covered the boogeyman, but really when I was researching it, it turned out it was almost like a tulpa or a manifested thought form, but it summed up your actual fears. So depending on what culture you're in, it's going to reflect the darkest, most negative aspects. So I did one in northern Mexico on my blog, and the boogeyman is this honeybee hybrid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a honeybee hybrid type thing that comes after kids. So, and it depends on where you're from. Like, you know, I'm from the Midwest and stuff, so it's going to be, you know, this is like a Western European, North American thing, 50s urban legend. It's going to be the monster in the closet, essentially. But really, it's just the personification, fear of the unknown, and anxiety. So that's my bit.
I would have to, you know, say no, but that's me. We're not gonna argue on it, but we can put our
I mean, if I did it, if I did in Africa, it would be some kind of primate thing. In
right.
Jung,
but I'm going with the actual scary stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just the personification of fear, specifically
and
around. That's my academic, because I'm all academic.
And then there's the offshoot of the boogeyman that includes the cautionary tale of you better be good. Otherwise, the boogeyman will get you. And in a way, it's like, is this a parent fable to tell children to get them to behave? Or is there something to it, you know? It's very interesting.
When I was a kid, I had Oogalaga because I have Scandinavian roots, and that was the troll in the well. So, back to you guys. I was like,
No, I'm fascinated about maybe even the evolutionary reason for the boogeyman too, because every human child at a certain age is afraid of the unknown thing that could be under the bed, could be in the closet. We're hardwired at a certain age to be on the lookout. We know that it's out there.
Won't go to bed with the door open.
Right. And in our mind's eye, what is it? Well, you can speak to any, 3 to 5 year old, and they're always going to be usually describing a few things. It's going to be hairy, right? It's going to have big eyes, and it's going to have the teeth. And it occurs to me that there is probably an evolutionary reason for that, as I had said. I think that a lot of that has to do with the brain, the DNA, keeping kids on the lookout for predators back in the day before we were living in condos, right?
Right.
And the reason why kids won't, they don't want to eat anything that actually has flavor to it, right? Because that helps them stay away from poisonous foods, things that are unknown. And I find that really fascinating to look at all the things that we sort of take for granted, but then look at them through like the evolutionary lens of why do we do that? And sometimes you can make some really interesting correlations. And then sometimes you actually hear the stories about there actually being a boogeyman under the bed in the closet, and that just spices things up.
I would have to. My brain makes the connection that it's almost a Hat Man type of or shadow person entity. But then again, is it all in your head, or is there something actually out there?
Right. Or are we collectively, with our collective consciousness, bringing it into play?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Slender Man that falls into the tulpa.
Yep, the tulpa.
Bucket. I'm not that drunk yet.
You say we could talk about the Philip. It's like the Philip experiment.
Yes.
It's like the more and more people think about something, all of a sudden, is it going to be manifested and come to life, or is there actually, or was there actually a ghost named Philip that was conjured up with all this?
Or did something
that was the big argument.
Yeah. I'm totally believing consensus reality. So.
And then you have your table chasing you across your living room.
I hate when that happens.
I know. But you usually have big dogs underneath your tables that are chasing you around. So.
Or snoring behind me on the bed. Yes.
Yes.
So guys, I have a question, because the writing is so well. I mean, you have the interviews and stuff, but just the writing overall and the pacing and the storytelling. So if you could, I'm a big production nerd. So I am all into what kind of mics, what kind of mixing, blah blah blah. But when it comes to if I can't even talk tonight, really. Storytelling technique and the process that you go through to bring the episode from a writing perspective, from sourcing, originating, and don't give away any secrets. If you got trade secrets, please don't. But how does it go from that little kernel, that little match in the dark, to the full-blown auditory movie that you do?
Wow,
oh, thank
that's
you.
a good one. I can kind of start.
Yeah,
I usually start.
That's true. I was going to say the same.
Maxwell will be like, "What do you think we should do next?" And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of sit back and have a feeling about what feels good, what's the vibe. Obviously we want to keep a variety going, but we also want to trend some things. But if something is really catching my interest, I'll go ahead and suggest that, because I really do believe in intuition and just working with that inner voice that you have. So normally I'll be like, oh, well, or we'll come across something like The Secret Life of Plants. When we came across that book, it just immediately felt right. And when I picked it up, someone else saw it in my house and said, "I'm reading that right now too." I'm like, a book from 1976, And so, synchronicities like that and stuff. And so usually I'll take a topic, I'll try and research as much as possible, start dumping it into our template. And then Maxwell really, he puts on that producer hat and that storytelling hat, and he's just so good at the narrative and the big picture that he kind of takes it from there. So why don't you talk about your process a little bit, Love?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Jennifer is always finding amazing things, or reminding me of stuff that we have been wanting to do. That there's, when you look at the world of, strange history and science and the paranormal, it's an embarrassment of riches, really. And sometimes it's, you don't even know where to begin. So
Ghost gnomes.
Jennifer is excellent at picking up wonderful stuff. And from there, I think we do really focus on the structure. And one of the things that we've found is that a subject that has a lot of really interesting details is a fascinating read, but not necessarily fascinating to listen to. One of the things that we really focus on is the storytelling aspect of the narrative, because that's what really locks us in as listeners.
Right.
And we have actually, well, in fact, we currently have on hold an episode that we're really excited about, but we feel like it doesn't quite have that
personal element. Yeah,
it doesn't have the storytelling, doesn't have the narrative thread in there yet. So we are working on that. And what are some other things that we look at?
Like I said, the flow of how it's structured, and just you. Like, even with Secret Life of Plants, you're very much like, this is really great information, and the things that Clive Baxter discovered were really amazing, but what's his story? And it hadn't even occurred to me that, like, the journey of what he went through in presenting all this and how it all came to be. I was just like, no, let's get to the good part. The plants are talking.
That's
very
right.
Swamp Thing.
Yeah, that's right. We have found that it's really easy to focus on the weird stuff, the stuff that you can't explain, the Hollywood special effects stuff. But the human element is just as compelling in all of these stories. Often you find there are maybe strange correlations going on between who's telling the story, who's witnessing this, and what's going on with them, and how that might be affecting the experiences they're having, or how you might read something completely different into the things that are going on. Like, for instance, if someone is talking about poltergeist activity and going into detail about the poltergeist, that's interesting. But then if you find out that there is in the house this person's family, and there's a lot of family drama going on, and there's maybe some teenagers, and the teenagers are going through a rough time, and suddenly you start connecting some dots that make it just that much more engrossing. So we do try to zero in on the human element as well, and it really makes for a more robust story.
Because there's, besides aliens, there's usually a human involved.
Yes.
I was having flashback to some journalism classes I took on feature stories and take the focus approach to take you through the narrative of it all. It's almost like the hero's journey, and it doesn't sound like you guys are doing a 3-act type structure. It seems more like a hero's journey type with the obstacles that they hit along the way. And in art, well, I might be getting too technical for the audience, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
No, absolutely. And you were talking about the 3 acts. I think as far as we get on that is we always want to make sure we start off with a strong story, and we try to end big as well too. So we do that. That definitely comes from my my theater and film background.
So I was wondering too, it's like how many of the stories that you get, do you have to kind of rewrite a little bit, or are the stories that people send you, that good? I wonder how well do you have to like rewrite them just a little bit to make them, a little bit more
develop.
Yes, develop. I'm sorry.
The
Yes.
narrative.
Develop them, polish them a little more better.
We
Because
definitely
some of them are so good.
Oh, thank you.
I mean,
We
most
do
of
get a
them
lot
are
of
really
great
good.
stories.
Yeah, content-wise, we don't touch them. Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of times we'll go back and we'll ask clarifying questions, or it always surprises me how many details we can get from asking even more questions, and then we'll place them into the story where appropriate, and with the pace of it. But it's amazing how it's a funny thing, because when you're telling someone a story, you know everything in your head already. So you might not think to add a detail because you already know it. And that's one of the hard things about writing. So with us not being familiar with a story, hearing someone say it, just even saying, what year was the house? How many bedrooms? How did you feel about this experience? That sort of thing. Just because there's a lot of details and stuff they might just take for granted that we can then put into the story and fill it out a bit. But do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it's true. The clarifying questions really brings out a lot of details. Jennifer's absolutely right. And of course, we have, everyone has strengths, and we get some stories that are from a writing standpoint just absolutely perfect, and we pretty much just read them verbatim. And there are others that are wonderful stories, but sometimes we will move things around that doesn't disrupt the timeline, but doesn't give something away, has more of a punch.
Right.
If we find that something was written in more of a conversational tone and it's so casual that it might bump the listener a little bit, we might finesse that a little bit. But whatever edits we make, we will send them to the person who submitted the story and ask for feedback and approval, and just to make sure that we got it right.
Yeah.
We would hate to
Awesome.
think,
We don't want to assume anything, right?
right. We would hate it that if our little finesse ended up changing a fact or put too much emphasis on something. So we always get approval.
Yeah, but we are fortunate that we've had so many people write in who are good
Yes.
writers, to the point where A.D. Vaughn has sent us such gems of stories that really caught our eye, and we're like, we need more from you. Yeah. So we want to work more closely with her in the future, just because we can really recognize talent in people. And again, just with Odd Tonic, it's not about us as much as it is about people and the community and just the experiences that we all share. So if we find someone who just has a fabulous talent, I think there might be room to bring them on board a little bit.
Yeah, there's
That's awesome.
lots of work to go around on Odd Tonic.
So what is one of your favorite your favorite stories? Can you I know you have like so many, but
Yeah.
what are some of your favorite ones that come to mind?
Oh, yeah. Are we talking strictly listener stories or just topics we've covered in general?
It could be both.
Either.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I just have such a spot in my heart for a good old ghost story.
Oh yeah.
I know, me too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sister.
Me too.
like it's usually one of the first things I ask people I don't know, like, do you have a ghost story? Because I just love hearing them, to the point where, like, if I'm listening to a good ghost story, my eyes start tearing up. It's just like
Right.
this emotional response. I get goosebumps and everything. So I don't know. I'll have to think about it for a second if I have
That's
a
fine.
particular favorite. But yeah, one of the scarier things I think we've covered is the sleep paralysis and Hatman stuff, just because you're in such a vulnerable state when you're sleeping. It's hard to record a show like that in your home and then be like, all right, shutting off the lights, going to bed. And
Oh, yes.
there can be a bit of power of suggestion in your sleep and your dreams as well. So it's like, oh, please do not let the hag show up, because it's like, and then it's like, is it actual experience? Did I invoke this, or is it power of suggestion? And who is going to believe me now?
Right.
Oh my gosh.
I do love a hag story, I gotta tell you.
Oh, really?
Oh, I
Awesome.
love like the whole nightmare demon, like mixed, is this real? Is this not real? Kind of that etherverse that exists between the dreaming state and the real, and anything dealing with lucid dreaming. I'm a sucker. Yeah,
Good.
I'm a sucker.
Good. Yeah,
I wish I could lucid dream. It's one of those things. I really wish I would be able to do that, because of course when I go into a dream, I don't know that it's a dream. I mean, it all seems, very real. So yeah, I wish I could be one of those
I'm
people
a
that all of a
control
sudden
freak,
says, hey.
so,
Me too.
yeah, I control. So yeah.
I've managed a few times to realize I'm dreaming, and it's always the same scenario. I'm dreaming. I can fly, and then I'll fly, and then eventually,
that's awesome.
I start to sink, and I wake up.
Oh yeah. Well, I gotta tell you, there's nothing like the jerk right before you hit. Like that's the. Then I crash right out. And
Yes.
yeah, totally love it.
Yeah, I'm with Jennifer. I really enjoyed the ways. Well, first the inspiration of doing our sleep paralysis episode. June, you were asking about our favorite submissions. Every time we're about to embark on a Parlor Stories edition, I think that every time I turned to Jennifer, I said, "These are really good stories. It happened again. These submissions are absolutely amazing." And I think I actually say it on the episodes too. Just every time it's like, "Oh, you're not going to believe these stories. These are amazing." And we're just so lucky. We've got the best listeners out there, and we are just so thankful that they are brave enough and generous enough to share with us. So if you're listening out there, thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Yes.
So, quick question for you then is versus reader submission, but what about the horrors of reality, like reading the news, and what has that inspired? Okay.
Yeah, and horrors of reality. How do we feel about it? Do we work
horror's
into the
horror,
show?
but I mean, good stories can come out of, the horrible stuff that you read in the news in contemporary. And I that's not really your bag and stuff like that.
No, I totally. One thing that we talk about quite a bit, even before we started the podcast, was, weird history, strange science, and the paranormal can cover a lot of things, and there are a lot of paranormal / true crime podcasts out there, and there is a lot of badness in the news and contemporary horror And I don't know. Personally, I don't have it in my heart to have an entertainment podcast and include that sort of thing in it.
Fair.
Just because I'm a very empathic person, and I put myself in their shoes, and I can't imagine having someone listening to my story like that, or, you know, so I'd much rather keep it on the side of these are fascinating things that we cover, and there's plenty of that. And no need to really go into, you know, every once in a while we'll do a weird news episode like storming Area 51 and things like that, or new science breakthroughs that are just blowing our mind. But as far as contemporary real life horror and drama, I'm content to let the newspapers cover that.
Right. And another thing that
Right.
keeps us
I know
from
what you mean.
sort of going into that territory is that we decided early on that we wanted to keep Odd Tonic suitable for families. If you're playing the podcast in the car and you've got kids in the background, if you feel like they can handle the content.
Yeah, if you've got spooky kids.
Yeah, I mean, we were
Right.
spooky kids.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
Yep, me too.
so we in a way we make Odd Tonic for the spooky kids that we were. And we always keep the language clean. So if you feel like the kids can handle the content, you don't have to worry about the language. And you were asking
Right.
about, you know, just sort of meditating on the horrors of the world. I think that another thing that would keep us from doing that is we wouldn't want to be the ones responsible for bringing that sort of content to the kiddos. So
Nor do we want to encourage it in any way. If that's
Yeah, the
possible.
media
No.
effect.
You know, it's like,
Yeah.
no,
If any fascist dictator happened to be listening to Odd Tonic, we just don't want to encourage them. Bad dictator.
No.
Bad.
Bad.
I completely
yes.
understand that. Like, time and I'll call it humor
yes.
are a great barrier to
Yes.
the horrors of the contemporary world.
Yeah,
I totally.
and
I know I have some empathic friends that are just like, I can't, like, and whoever the audience is, their grandparents. Okay, because time is a great barrier for
Right.
that serious topic.
And it's funny because a lot of
Yeah.
ghost stories are attached to some kind of tragedy, but it's kind of what you focus on and where you put your attention to sometimes with that. And sometimes it could be really a delicate balance. So I can respect that too. So it's not like, no, you know, none of this, but because there is tragedy attached to the paranormal a lot. And
Oh, yes.
and it, you know, in a way you want to be able to tell that story because there's a justice in sharing it and not forgetting it too. So it's all about the balance.
Yeah, and
Right.
plus, oh goodness, I think I forgot what I was going to say.
That's okay. Have a sip of tea and say, hey, Jennifer.
That happens a lot
Yeah,
around
that's-
here.
Yeah,
Yes,
I was gonna
please.
say, when
This isn't
when I
me.
write on my site, I can cover some pretty dark stuff, but I do have a rule of thumb: is if it's like horrible, I don't go past 1975. Because
Right.
I've got a good 45 or so. You know, I've got a generation plus buffer to talk about the darkness. So, like, if there's any wounds, it's scarred. And then for a lot of the younger folks, they wouldn't necessarily be able to directly relate to it. And that's a good buffer.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that makes sense. And I think that even though on Odd Tonic we don't steer into that territory, we do like the spooky. We still like the spooky, and I'm a little proud of some of the episodes, particularly around Halloween that we did, where we
Yes.
really
Those
amped
were
up the
really good.
spooky. Oh, thank you,
They
Jen.
were.
Thank you.
I think you even gave me goosebumps a couple times, and that's really hard to do. I was like, "Ooh, I love
Ooh,
that
nicely
story."
done.
Yes.
Black Eyed Kids was a good one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Black-eyed children are those stories just kind of freak me out a little bit. I don't know if you know who David Weatherly is.
Oh, yeah.
He writes a lot of books about
Mhm.
yes, black-eyed children. He's a good friend of my Ross and
Mhm.
Ross Allison and I. He's very, very nice, but some of his stories with black-eyed children just, oh my gosh, that just kind of freaks me out. And it takes a lot to freak me out. Let's just say
It's such
a lot.
yeah, it's such a different phenomenon. And when I had first heard about it, I thought it was an urban legend, you know, like Slender Man. I really thought it was. And then Maxwell's like, no, it isn't. I'm like, well, let me read this book. I'm like, oh no.
Right.
So in your opinion, what do you think the black-eyed children are? Do you have an opinion with that?
It depends on the day when you ask me.
Yes, I know what you mean.
So-
I'm
like
the same way.
realness.
Yes, I'm the same
Uh,
way.
Maxwell and I really love the hungry ghost idea, right?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to talk
From
about
Buddhism.
that a little bit? Because we were debating it when we were doing the episode, and what you
Right.
can focus on. Because we also like to give the listener a bit of an answer, right?
Mhm.
Right. There's definitely some correlations between the hungry ghost traditions in Asia and the black-eyed kids. I think that although there are some correlations, there aren't complete correlations. So I think that depending on the tale, like with any paranormal sort of experience, I think there might be different types of black-eyed children, black-eyed people. I think that,
Could be.
I mean, certainly if in China and Japan they're seeing spirits with black eyes, and they're asking for food, you can't say, well, I mean, they have black eyes. You can't say that they are. And if they're a child, you can't say that was not a black-eyed kid.
Mhm.
I think that there are a wide variety of experiences, and I think maybe a variety of entities with the black eyes. As for any theories as to where they come from, what do they want?
Yes.
I mean, it's obvious that they are parasites, and they seem to
Vampiric.
and they seem to feast on energy, or like life force energies. I know that I'm just gapping on the names.
Yeah.
But as to where they come from and where they go after that, I don't know.
Yeah. And this
It is kind of funny though. I was just going to say, you see on some of the alien shows, they talk about black-eyed children on alien shows, and they talk about black-eyed children on paranormal ghost shows. So it's fascinating, about that. So sorry, Jennifer, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, that's an excellent point. And that's another thing that just makes it so difficult to be able to put your finger on it. And, sometimes I am comfortable with the answer of, I just don't know. I can't.
Me too.
I just can't, And then, when you factor in, is this some kind of screen memory, and what is presented to you isn't even what your brain is interpreting as to what's going on. I feel like that could easily be part of it as well. Because, you hear stories about them being there 1 second and not being there the next. And
Right.
some of it really does sound kind of alien. And you just don't know on this one. It's just a really, really bizarre, disturbing subject.
It
On the
is.
subject of disturbing kids, I think the Scandinavian, you can tell because I'm 6 feet tall and blonde, right? As I look at you with my dark brown eyes and black hair, right?
Me too. Yeah.
So when we talk about boogeymans and cautionary tales, so my family's Norwegian, and we had mealings. I don't know if you know what a mealing is, but these are the cast aside child spirits. They were toddlers that were abandoned in the woods.
Oh.
And so it's kind of like a be careful, teenage daughter tale, but it goes back throughout Scandinavian lore that these young mothers would abandon their children in the forest who would die from exposure, and then they would come after to claim the life force of their mother.
Oh, wow.
And if they couldn't find her, they found someone like their mother. And then it was the whole creepy, rotting toddler flesh, let me suck your life horse kind of tale. But this has been part of Scandinavian lore since like the 1300s and stuff like that. They go back. So Mealings, I don't know if you want to look it up, but that's creepy kid tale.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when I heard Black-Eyed Children, like I immediately thought about Mealings. It's Mylings. I'll drop a link in our chat over there.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'd love to look that up.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that really is, I think, really fascinating for me is the whole having to be invited into your space. And I don't know if that is just a ploy to keep you standing there while they're secretly feasting on you, or if there's really something to that. And one of the theories that we had that I think we may have shared on the episode is that they're certainly asking to come into your physical domain, but by asking that, when you give them permission to come into your physical domain, are you also in your mind giving them permission to kind of come in here too? Yeah. Because there is so much sort of psychic stuff that seems to be going on. They seem to be able to read your thoughts in some of these stories, or they're I'm forgetting some of the details, but it seems like they can get into your head and they know what's going on. And it makes me wonder if by giving them, again, permission to come into your physical space, you're giving them permission to come into like an intimate part of your psyche and that's really what they want. So I don't know. The whole thing is very creepy and very fascinating.
Exactly.
The threshold.
Right.
Ideas and doorways to here, there, and yonder. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Food for thought. No pun intended.
Those are very good. Very good.
Your brain is like some popcorn.
I also really enjoyed your the reincarnation episodes with the children that talk about the different things they're going through. That was really a good episode too. It's I do love reading stories about that, especially when a 3-year-old starts talking about how he used to be a pilot and things like that. And you're just like,
lives, yeah.
Maybe there is something to this, because part of me is like, I don't know if I believe that or not. But then you start hearing more and more of these little children, or say something like, when I was up there, and I chose you, mommy, out of all the other women, it's just like, what? What is this? But yeah, I really enjoyed that episode too. There's so many of them, I can't even go into.
Yeah. It's a really fascinating subject, and you're right. We did share a couple of those stories on a Parlor Stories edition, which is our listener submissions episodes. But we do plan on creating an episode that digs completely into reincarnation, and that's exactly where we're going to start first. We're going to start with the stories from the kids, because you just there's no logical explanation for the details that they can give, particularly in India. There have been stories. I think the story that really blew me away the most was, and I don't have a lot of the details top of mind, but the broad strokes is that a child was born and was doing the usual of, well, you're not my mom, you're not my first mom, I have this other mom, and they were very specific about, and I had this family, and we lived in this village, and the village actually wasn't that far away, and the family decided to take their child to the village, and the child was pointing out different things that they remembered dead on. They had never been to the village before. And the child was able to
Wow.
point out their murderer from their previous life.
I
It
remember
actually,
reading
it actually
that.
solved a cold
Yeah.
case. Did you remember that?
I remember reading that. It's like, yeah, that was really something.
Yeah.
And
There's no rational explanation for
No.
that.
None. That's when you have to take on faith.
Yeah.
it's like,
Or
Yeah,
like
originally
children
when I
just
was
start
hearing
speaking
stories,
French, you know.
yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
speaking French.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the language thing is, but I always viewed it as maybe some kids are far more receptive to their psychic abilities simply because they
Mhm.
haven't aged and been conditioned to ignore it. So I thought about a lot of kids with these very clairvoyant abilities really being remote viewers, or maybe they're, if you believe in astral projection and stuff, you can travel through time and space.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that could be more reason for it then, but
Right. That maybe and the reason why they're sort of zeroing in on one life rather than many lives is, you're absolutely right. It could be a phenomena where they've got an entity whispering in their ear,
Mhm.
or
you never
even
know.
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
stepping in a bit.
or stepping in. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
I
Exactly.
mean, because it's not like Carillion photography is going to do it, like you can't really, there's
Right.
like no way to prove it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have no way to actually prove it through science.
Yeah,
Of
that's
anything, actually.
that's true. And thanks for bringing that up. I think that's a really interesting
Mhm.
angle that
'Cause you
I
never
would
know.
love to research a bit. So yeah,
Whoa.
Go for it.
check that out when we actually make the episode.
Yeah, the other thing is what I find it really interesting about, especially Tibetan Buddhism. I'll probably skewer the name of it, but I think it's Vajrayana or something like that. That's the Tibetan brand, heavily influenced by Hinduism. And, this is where you get the Dalai Lama reincarnation, and the tales are so ingrained. Sometimes I'm a debunker by nature. I always think because it's so well recorded and documented that hearing the tales, reading the tales, it could have an imprint on kids. I'm not saying this is the case, but if you look at it from a natural explanation, part of it could be simply because of the documentation is so good
Right.
for it. They could have heard it. And like we hear about the associations we make just by something we heard randomly or read or saw on TV, and we can recall it at a different time, but we don't really know how we
Right.
recalled it.
Right. And that ties into the whole collective unconscious
Yeah.
thing, doesn't it too? I mean, there has been the documented scientific research of, the tribe of monkeys that discovered the tool in a certain location,
Yeah.
and then,
All
on
of them knew it.
an isolated island where other monkeys are, suddenly within a very limited time frame, they started using the same tool out of the blue. It's like, how does this happen? And I think you're right. I think that once,
Which is no less fantastic.
oh, absolutely,
correct.
Yeah.
absolutely, and I think that it is important to as strange as these cases are, it's important to keep our minds open and know that it could be any variety of bizarre answers, not necessarily the one that
Right.
seems the most obvious.
Yeah. I was going to say the human mind is a doorway to a billion portals. It
Right.
just depends on what the inputs is for the output.
Yeah.
And, like it's scientifically acknowledged that we can pass our phobias on to our children. Who knows what else, erase memory and things like that we
I gotta-
pass on to each other, and
Right.
Yeah. And even
ways
no
we
matter,
understand and how we
and no matter how rational we are like if you're raising, I don't have kids, I got dogs. Okay. So, but even if you rationally think I don't want to teach my kids this, you still have physical reactions. And if children read by viewing and intuiting what the parent means, and so it could get baked in early.
Right. Right. And not just kids.
Yeah.
the stories of the genius horses, right? Who that through the tapping of the hoof could somehow and what was the story of the farmer who took his horse on the road because somehow this horse was psychic and was
Psychic horse?
And it was clomping the right number of
Lady Wonder
age or weight or whatever it is, the questions, and they found out that the horse was just an expert at reading the face of the farmer. Yeah. And the closer they got to the right answer, he's kind of like, yeah. And,
well, except for that they did the experiments with it and put the blindfold on the horse, and it still got the correct answer.
Oh, I needed to check my source.
Uh-huh.
I'm dropping the link in the chat.
Fascinating.
Maybe it's cues through body odor.
Pheromone. Yeah. I mean, with the whole thing with the ghosts and pets though, it's just because they have such enhanced senses that they can probably pick things up that we can't. Yeah. So.
Dogs have you had a pet episode? Have you had a pet ghost episode yet? I mean, not pet ghost, but a pet's reacting to ghost episode.
I've thought about doing pets.
We've talked about it. We've definitely talked about it.
So fascinating.
Yeah. In fact, that was one that we talked about early on, and I think that we just forgot about it. And all
we
of them.
gotta take better notes.
Yeah, but absolutely, those stories are fascinating. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm sure that you guys can back this up. Stories of animal spirits are, I think, just as common as human spirits.
Yeah.
There are always the stories of the person who's, for instance, lost a cat, and a couple of weeks later they feel a weight jump up on the bed.
Right. I've actually had that.
Oh, really?
I have actually had that. And also there was one day I was changing the sheets and I fluffed the sheets out. And next thing I know, I saw a cat jump down and go out of the room and then just disappear. And I just stood there for a second like, what did I just see? Because then I thought, it just must be I'm working too hard. But I swear I saw a cat jump down from the sheets and run out. But I think it was my little Jinxie. So.
Yeah.
When I lost a Leroy Brown dog, great big German Shepherd dog, and a couple weeks after, I'm sitting with my back to the bed, I'm probably on the computer, and heard what sounded like him getting up on the bed, and I thought, well, it's probably my other dog getting on the bed, so I turn around and start to say, hey, Augie, and no, Augie was in the other room sound asleep. And there's just, the distinction, there's no way to mistake the sound of a big dog getting on your bed for, I don't even know what.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've had 2 experiences with pets, one I haven't talked about.
Ooh, do tell.
I'll start with the first one, and this is with, I have a pit bull German Shepherd mix. His name is Wally. He's got very goofy ears. Anyway,
he's so cute. I love him.
This was when I was living in Chicago, so I'm a Chicagoan. Shout out Chicago if you're listening. And I was with my other ghost hunting partner, and we were back in my condo. And of course, we were being all creepy. We didn't do the Zozo Ouija, okay? But you know what I'm talking about. With not that far.
Yeah.
But Wally went around the corner by the bedroom, looked up at the ceiling, the corner of where like the living room meets a bedroom, and just went ballistic. And then when I played back the EVP, I got an F you, her, in a very demonic voice. And so he was barking right. It happened, and then Wally went off.
Wow.
Second story.
Wow.
This was when I was much younger. I don't know if you can make an episode out of that, but whatever, take it. Second story deals with cats. Yes, I have had cats. I'm not necessarily a cat person, but I do love my cats. This is with Sebastian, who is an orange tabby. He's like a 2 foot tall, I'm going to kick your ass alley cat out of Chicago. Okay. And in that case, I was actually staying over at my friend's house. She's my prime hag. You know, if you're on my side of the fence, you know what the prime hag is. You know, just default to the prime hag. And her house used to be a funeral parlor, a funerary house. And
Awesome.
it was early in the morning, and Seb jumps off. It's short names for Sebastian. I called him Seb. He jumps off, hides under a dresser. And then, like, I'm awake. I'm caffeinated. Okay. It's like 8:30 in the morning. The house kind of shimmers, and I see a couple fighting, and she throws things at him. So he jumps off the bed, hides under the dresser. This woman and man manifest, and it looks like she throws a phone at him. And then it shimmers and fades away. And Sebi like sticks his head out. But he ran under like 3 seconds before it happens. And I'm just like sitting there like,
Wow.
So those are my animal ghost stories right there. Okay.
Wow. That's pretty awesome.
That was. I wish I was like ghost hunting at the time. This was like 9 years before I became a ghost hunter.
Yeah.
It probably helped to contribute to it too.
It was the 2007 event that did that.
The 2007 event?
The 2007 event.
I want to hear that one, unless you've told it before in the past.
I have not, but you're the guest, so I want
I love a good ghost
I'm not
story.
hogging your time, but let's just say Chicago, north side of Chicago, along the lake, a lot of the apartment buildings used to be hotels.
Mhm.
And so I go into the elevator. I lived on the 12th floor, you know, and it's at Sheridan and Foster, if you're familiar with Chicago. So right in the Edgewater neighborhood. And the elevator gets stuck between the 7th and 8th floor. And, you know, it's the kind of thing, you know, gold plated, you know, you got some nice marble, you know, we're thinking 1920s, 1930s Art Deco type stuff, interiors, you know. And it's going up and it's rattling. I'm like, this is taking an awfully long time to get to the 12th floor. But as it's going, it's groaning and it rattles. And I'm just like, this isn't good. I've never been stuck in an elevator in my life, and this building is too old to have the emergency press the thing, you know, with the red button with the alarm and stuff.
Help is on the way.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And so the elevator gets stuck in between the 7th and 8th floor. And I'm just like, but the whole time it's rattling. I'm like, this is my final destination moment. I cannot believe I'm going to like get taken out in an elevator collapse, which is kind of cool. But still, I am going to die in an elevator, like cable snap, death, splat. Okay, I'm going to be compressed. I'm going to become a panini. Jake Panini here. But it rattles. I hear some groaning. And then I kind of like, I don't, this is the whole inexplainable part of it, right? Inexplicable? Yeah. Okay, for all you English majors out there. Okay. There's like this gold light that forms, and I can feel the shimmering, and a silhouette of a man starts to form, but he's all gold. And I was just like, I don't know who you are. You seem familiar, but this isn't, you don't belong here. And I'm going to be fine. So you have to go away because you might be helpful, but I don't need you actually anymore, whoever you are. I kind of figure it was my Grandpa Jones. It was kind of the feeling, you know, you have a feeling for a relative, and I absolutely loved my grandparents. Loved them. I was just like, you know, I'm like 30 at the time, and I'm just like, can you go? And it like shimmered and faded away, and then the elevator was still stuck, and it turned out they were speaking to me. It was like the elevator, the elevator people. I had actually hit the button, and they were listening
like real
to me.
people, not just the elevator people. The
And
real people.
I couldn't hear them, and then it went away, and they're like, it's like, it's okay. We're sending the, I forgot the name of the elevator. You know, the big elevator company. I cannot remember the name.
Yeah.
Schindler.
And they're just like, yeah, we're sending someone. We'll get you out. All we have to do is pull. They'll get the crowbar to pull you out from the 8th floor. So you'll need to reach up. And then after that, I'm just like, I grabbed the Mel meter and the full spectrum camera, and I was busting ghosts. Okay,
Yeah.
that's my story. That's my story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jake has a lovely assortment of gadgets.
Yes.
An
So
amazing
I
assortment
yeah,
of
I call
gadgets.
these boo moments because when it comes to most ghost stories, it's most people just have like one incredible event and they're never bothered again for the most part. This is like 95% of the people that write into my blog and stuff. It's just like really a one-time event. Enough, you either accept it like me and you're kind of fascinated, or you're just like, that was crazy. But this happened at 2:30 in the afternoon after I had played beach volleyball. Okay, this was the summer. This was like August. So
Yeah,
that's my bit. I'll shut up because we still have 48 minutes to fill it.
I think,
Oh, great story.
yeah.
Thank you.
I think all of Chicago is haunted. I mean, every
I
square.
think you're right too. That's what, from all the stories, especially the
Yeah.
stories Jake tells. It's like, yes.
I've
I'm,
investigated them all. Yeah.
I'm originally from Chicago. My family is still there, and yeah,
What part? Let's
it's
talk.
South Side.
Okay,
Right across the
Bridgeport or Canaryville or.
No, like let's see, Chicago Ridge, Oak Forest.
Oh, yep. Southwest side. Yep.
But I also have family in Schaumburg. I used to live in Libertyville and Evanston as well.
Okay, north side. Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of been all the way around the city.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in
my sister
Edgewater.
used to live in, okay. And Rogers Park. I have
Yep.
friends in Rogers Park. And my
Okay.
sister used to live in like in Lincoln Park around that area.
Oh yeah. Everyone that moves into the city lives in Lincoln Park and Lakeview.
It's a part of the initiation, right? But yeah, just Chicago itself just, I don't mean to speak ill of the city. It just has so much energy and just feels like so much history is there and so much has gone on. And boy, they've got great museums.
Oh yeah. We got a whole lot of museums. Yeah. So to one Chicago and to another. Cheers.
Yes, awesome.
I clap my gums a lot. I'm gonna go back to the Odd Tonic folks now. But
Have you
I'm
had
all
any-
into like how they record the episodes and the gear and the mixing.
Oh, right.
I love the
We didn't,
production part of it. And then of course we'll get to
right.
Mad Scientists and Monsters afterwards because
I do love the monsters episode.
Thank you. Yeah, let's see. We
That's all
record.
you.
Right. And you will quickly become disgusted with the fact that I can't remember the specifics of everything.
That we
mics. Let's talk mics.
Sure. We did a lot of research, and because we're good at that, we like our research. We ended up picking up the Heil, I think.
Oh, yeah.
45? Or is it 48?
The PR 40
Yes.
40. Yep.
Yes. So we each have one of those. We have the mic arms to sort of like keep them
Boom
up.
mics. Yeah.
Yeah. So that we can keep our desk space open as we're recording. We have a Mackie Pro Effects 8 mixer.
Oh, nice.
Which we like, but it is a little noisy. So I think that even with a preamp, the Heils really suck up a lot of power.
They do. Yeah, like you need 60. They say 48. It needs like 60.
Yeah.
Phantom power amps of phantom power for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We learned that the hard way. So
Trial and error.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna get another preamp to get that worked out. We've got what are the headphones?
There's one right there.
Right. The oh my goodness, I don't remember the name.
Can't read it.
That's okay.
It's a little
I understand.
Look, dude, you are so steampunk right now.
And you still can't read it.
I still can't read it.
So I bet it's either an Audio Technica, a Sennheiser, a Sony.
Yes, the Audio Technica, the M50X.
Oh, that's what I got. That's what I'm wearing on right now.
Oh,
actually.
I couldn't even tell. Yep.
Oh, no, it's a little dark in here, but yeah, I got my Audio Technica 50s.
We love them.
Yeah.
Very comfy. And from there, we do our recording and post work in Adobe Audition.
Oh, Adobe Audition.
And yeah, we have a YouTube version of our audio show, and what we'll do is
let me drop that link because I don't think we had that.
Yeah, that was a lengthy discussion between Jennifer and me. We really wanted to have a presence on YouTube, but at the time we just didn't have. We had the desire, but we didn't have the bandwidth at the time to create a video podcast, either as a supplement or sort of switch from audio to video. So. But we still wanted to have our cake and eat it too. We still wanted to have some sort of visual representation of us and the parlor, and a little bit of motion during basically the audio podcast on YouTube. So we did some brainstorming and we figured out an opening. We give each show the same video opening where you get a few little glimpses into the parlor and all of our
stuff.
And
I love that.
Oh, thank you. And then you get a glimpse of us here on the settee, and then the camera is pointed down on the table where we record, where we have candles going and our teacup. Right. And
that's nice.
And we let that roll for the length of the audio, and we really like how it turned out.
That's kind of how I listen at work. Yeah, when I listen at work, and I'm pretending to file, as I'm stuck, filing the same document, for 10 minutes because I'm listening to you, but yes, that's what I do.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I brought it up because we do all of our video editing on Adobe Premiere.
Okay.
That's why I brought it up. So those are the two main tools, and of course Photoshop. Jen uses Photoshop for the graphics.
Our images and stuff.
Yeah,
me too.
I totally get it. Yeah.
Very nice.
Graphic wizard.
As a podcaster, what I really appreciate, especially about the video auditing software, I find that the video editors, because you can have a craptastic picture, but as long as you have killer sound, I find that the video editing software does the best job of mixing and making sure everyone's clear and giving more pop to, I'll call, the audio image than what you would, like I would use GarageBand because I have Macs. But even that's not as good as when I take it to iMovie and I have Final Cut Pro.
Oh, right.
That, and I know Adobe and their video Premiere does a really good job with mixing the audio as well. Like you get the richness, you get the high frequency, you get the mid-range much better. And when you add the ambient music and the sound effects, it's much better coming out of a video editing software.
Yeah. There's just, I'm really impressed with how Adobe has all of their tools able to work together in such a way that you can take an audio file that you've been working on in Audition and you can pull it into Premiere, and vice versa too. You can bring a video file into Audition and work on the audio that way as well. I think Jennifer and I both remember Adobe in the early days where you just kept your fingers crossed that you could have the document that you were bringing from Photoshop into Illustrator and back again wouldn't make your entire computer hang up. They've come a long way. Really,
oh yes,
I'm out.
yeah, they're doing a great job with integrating all their tools.
So true.
So we record in the parlor, and another thing, I think it's the actor in me, but I can't record in my audio podcast in my bathrobe. I do like to dress up. I do like to wear a corset when I'm recording.
Get into character.
Yeah,
right.
I often wonder how many podcasters put on a corset before they record. That is
Might
me.
help with projection.
It has gotten me a couple times though, because I'll be on a long breathy recording and suddenly I don't have any air left. Like, oh yeah, I had to breathe a little differently in this. But yeah, Love to dress up. I love yeah, there was just no question that just coming from such a visual artistic background that we really wanted everything to reflect everything, even if it's just an audio podcast.
Yeah, I was gonna say though, because Odd Tonic by far, because I'm a huge lore fan. I love Aaron Mahnke quite a bit.
It is great.
Really, yeah, and he's dark history. It's not quite the same. But I would say the one thing he misses that you guys nail is like world building and creating. Like I'm being transported. He's like I'm reading a fun history informational kind, but like I'm there with you guys.
Yay.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So what he does.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. We try really hard for that. And when we were developing Odd Tonic, we did hit a crossroads where the early direction we thought we were going to go, again, lots of research. We had been listening to lots and lots of paranormal podcasts.
Plus, we were inspired by them.
To
actually create our own.
Yeah.
Because we love them so much.
Yeah, and we just love the content. We thought, we knew that we wanted to do, an audio production, and in talking about, well, what are we fascinated by? Jennifer says it all the time. It was an obvious choice to be doing the weird history, weird science, and paranormal, because that's what we're passionate about. It's what we've always just ate up like popcorn since we were kids, and it's something that we'll just never tire of. And so we came up with a direction that we were going to go, and we had listened to lots of paranormal podcasts, and we said, well, we don't think that anyone's really taking this direction. And so we created a prototype, and we were sending it around to people. What do you think? What do you think? And then I thought, I never searched for paranormal comedy podcasts, which were a little bit of both. And it brought up hundreds more podcasts that I had never seen with just the first keywords of paranormal podcast. And there were many that were very, very similar to what we were doing, right down to
it's a guy and a girl.
Right. They had the same name for the same section.
Oh, that's
no.
This is the part of the show where we do X, and they had the same name for it. And
we're like, oh no.
And so I, being the perfectionist, I put on the brakes, and we thought,
made me cry.
And I challenged us to think about what can we do that maybe stands apart from what's already being done. And what was interesting was that it really focused us on who we were and who we are together. And we decided to take the risk and sort of really share who we are, share the parlor, share the fact that we love to dress up, share the fact that we don't just think these things are kind of kooky and fun and isn't that unusual. We're really passionate about that. So we decided to really reveal ourselves, really put ourselves out there. And I'm so glad that was, I'm so glad that is how we came about, because
it seems so obvious now.
It does, yeah.
I think
really
we were
does.
just blueprinting it so hard. We weren't stepping back and thinking about it emotionally, because really, to me, what I really I don't want to just invite our guests into the parlor. I want to invite them into this world, in this
our world.
And this dreaminess that is about it. And so much of that is artistic and emotional and just stirring. And there's a romance to it too. And there's just this so much creativity you can put into it. And I feel oftentimes in the modern world we find ourselves in, that's the thing that's thrown out first. The art programs are cut. We don't have budget to have a full-time artist. We'll freelance this, and it's kind of like the first thing that's cut. And really, it's your heart and your emotion and just the art that you can put into things. And just we really want to bring back that old world charm of things, that it isn't all about your commute time and you know, what's the frozen dinner of the day. You know, you can put art into anything, into what meal you make, you know, what you wear that day, how you express yourself. And I think that's really important to us as a podcast, that we can encourage that in people, because I really do believe the world just can only benefit from more of that.
I agree.
Yeah.
And your chemistry is really amazing too. I think that helps a lot.
I'm gonna free camera.
Yeah.
For folks on YouTube, fourth panel, if we're talking comic book.
What is that?
That was another conscious decision that we made, that we were going to be very upfront with our affection for each other too. I think Jennifer's absolutely right. The big change between the prototype and what we have now is that we altered our thought from what do we feel people would like to see to what is it about our personalities and our sensibilities that we enjoy so much, that we can just share and just take the risk to be us, and that included being affectionate, I think, with each other, and just letting that be part of the show. And I'm sort of, if you were to tell me a couple of years ago that we would end up going that way, I would be
you're usually
honestly freaked out, right?
Yeah.
Because me especially, I think I'm a rather private person, and just the thought
you weren't really on social media until the podcast, you know, so it was a challenge there to be a little more public like that.
It's true. It's true. And to be told that in just a year you're going to be just putting it all out there, I would have completely freaked out. But I think that somehow the show is stronger for it. I'm delighted and surprised.
Very well done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Wendy.
Well, at this juncture, would you like to start sharing some of your stories that I believe you brought along? We'd love to hear some ghost stories.
Yes,
and some,
definitely, please.
Yes.
We brought some listener stories that we have shared on different episodes of our Parlor Stories, and we have some good ones. Jennifer, did you want to share one first, or shall I jump right in?
I can share one, and then maybe you can share one. Do you have any personal ghost stories you want to share this evening, or?
Ooh, yeah.
I was wondering about that.
Oh, yeah, we could do those too.
I mean, I could briefly touch on. I've had numerous experiences throughout my life.
More than me. I'll be honest, more than me.
That I kind of always thought, oh, is it just the luck of the draw of the places I move into, or, you know, we often speculate if I'm a bit of an antenna for that sort of energy, and we actually kind of have to be a little careful with the subjects we pick and how excited I get about it, because it seems to attract that kind of energy. But I think, I don't know if I ever shared this story on the show, but when I was like 13 and I lived in Connecticut, I would wake up to hearing voices in the living room. It sounded like the TV was on, and I would lay there in bed for a minute and wonder about, why is someone up right now? And I would get up out of bed, walk down the hallway, and as soon as I crossed the threshold of seeing into the living room, it would stop, like, immediately. And this happened like quite a bit. And so that was just one house. And, you know, there's just, and it's funny because every location you live, it's always something different, right? It's never the same type of phenomenon. Like one house, it might be knocking, and another house, it might be visuals or things moving and that sort of thing. Right. So Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of, yeah, it's crazy. It's really neat to have personal experiences in something that you're so interested in, and then, you know, to be able to actually have firsthand accounts is something that I'm it's scary and terrible at the time, but I'm very grateful for being able to experience that sort of thing as well.
Nice.
Mhm.
But I do love hearing other people's stories as well, which is just such a perk with the podcast, that people send in their stories and share them with us, which is great. So I did pick one of my favorites that we have shared, and let me see if I can bring it up. This one was a story that A.D. Vaughn sent to us a little while ago. So settle in. Okay. It was 1995 when I moved to San Luis Obispo, California to begin college. San Luis Obispo, or SLO as the locals called it, is halfway between San Francisco and Los Angeles on California's central coast. Located on a coastal valley surrounded by rolling hills and rocky outcroppings, it's one of the most picturesque places I have ever lived. It's also crazy haunted. Home to California's first mass murder, a Spanish mission with a violent past, and at least 4 murders by 2 separate serial killers, San Luis Obispo County is steeped in violent and often haunted history. But as an incoming freshman, all I knew was that it was beautiful and I could study animals there. It wouldn't be long before I had my first introduction into SLO's dark history. A week before classes started, there was an orientation for incoming students. We basically spent 5 days running all around the county with other students, learning where to eat, where to play, and where to get into mischief. One night, our group leaders drove us out to the south side of town and up a hill behind the old general hospital. The street ended at the county probation office. Headlights off, we drove through their parking lot and onto a dirt road. Further up the hill, we saw a dark brick building looming in the moonlight. Designed by the same firm as the Ghirardelli Square in San Francisco, Sunny Acres and its Romanesque architecture was originally built to house tuberculosis patients in the 1930s. Over the decades, Sunny Acres served as an orphanage, a juvenile detention facility, and a home for difficult children. It was shut down in the 1970s amid rumors of steel cages and violent abuse. We got out of our cars and walked up to the front door. The plan was to get inside and walk the halls of the supposedly haunted hospital. But the windows and doors were boarded up tight, and we were worried we'd be seen in the bright moonlight. So we walked around back and sat on the blacktop of the playground. There were about 30 of us seated in a big oval on the basketball court, where we started talking, taking turns, telling ghost stories. Haunted houses, Ouija boards, Bloody Mary. We hit all the creepy teen highlights. We had been telling stories for about 45 minutes when it happened. I heard a scream of shock to my left, and then I felt 2 hands on my back push me violently forward. I sat back up in time to see that the person to my right was also leaning forward over their lap. And then I saw the next 2 people suddenly lean forward over their legs like they were being pushed. But there was no one there. Everyone else in the group thought we were messing around, but we all felt it. Someone or something had pushed each of us. Clearly, whatever it was didn't want us there on the blacktop. Since that day, the city of San Luis Obispo has had a few different offers to develop the property, but they've all fallen through for one reason or another. And the city put up a fence around the building and posted asbestos warnings to keep people out.
Right.
But a few years later, the city put up a second fence around just the blacktop, as if there was something there we also needed to fear. personally, I think it's some very angry children.
Very
Ooh.
cool.
There you go.
I like that.
Yeah. Great
I
story.
like that.
Great story. We love it.
Mhm.
Makes you wonder.
Yeah.
We never know what sort of experiences we're going to be getting from our listeners. There is such a wide spectrum of encounters and things that they've experienced, and sometimes you get stories that even with all the books that you read, that you get a story from one of these listeners like, I've never heard of anything like this happening before. And I had that experience reading this story from Gail. She says, "My name is Gail. I grew up in South Dakota near the Black Hills, an area rich with paranormal activity, as well as the remnants of prior times. For example, there were many teepee rings there, rings made of stones that were used to hold down teepees. Some of these were on the land which my family's ranch stands. You can find Native American artifacts along the river that flows through our property. The Black Hills are also home to Deadwood, the 1874 gold rush, the Bell Witch, known from the Blair Witch Project, and other cool and spooky things. I could ramble all day about the history here and my experiences. The one I want to share today would be an experience my family and I had when I was around 12. We are a family of spelunkers. I know, who takes a child spelunking? But that was me, a little girl who explored caves and mines. There are many of them in the Black Hills. Some were closed off, but that never stopped us from exploring. We would usually make a weekend of it with a group of friends. On one of our camping/spelunking adventures, most of the group stayed back at camp while my parents and I explored this little mine we had come across on the way into the camping site. The mine was boarded up, but there was a hole just big enough for a person to sneak into. Sketchy, right? My dad went in first just to make sure it was safe. My mother and I followed. Upon entering the darkness with our flashlights, we noticed the entrance branched off in two directions. One way was inaccessible due to water. It was common for miners to hit water and flood an area of a mine. So we took the other way. After some time of following the little minecart trails in the ground, the rails ended and the cave walls began to wind into a room. My dad peered into the room and exclaimed, "What? No way." My mother and I quickly came to look. The room was full of odd things, like old paintings, items made of gold and jewelry. It was like a treasure room. We didn't touch or take any of the items. My family believes in the paranormal and cursed items. So instead, my mother took some pictures, and we went back to camp to tell our friends to come look at what we had found. Perhaps an hour had passed from the time we had gone to the time that we returned to the cave. When we entered the cave's room, everything was gone. Our friends thought we were playing a joke on them, but when they saw how serious we all were, they too were spooked. We checked on the room a couple more times throughout the weekend, and the treasure never came back. Was it a time slip? Or ghosts? Who knows? Most likely this mine was used during the 1874 gold rush, sometime after that it was flooded. And maybe someone at the time hid their expensive riches in this thought to be closed off mine. That camera that my mother took the pictures of the room with was one of those disposable cameras everyone used in the 1990s. When she had it developed, they told her there was no film in the camera. So what were the odds of that? That they just happen to run into this ghostly treasure in this mine, and then she goes. I mean, you guys are experienced. As soon as you heard about the camera and she's going to go to get developed, it's like, okay, well, the film is probably going to be blank,
Yeah,
or
blank.
show's never been exposed. But
Right.
we had never heard of the entire film roll missing. That's
Yeah, especially from a
advanced
disposable
paranormal.
camera.
Yeah.
Wow.
It seems.
I think you're muted, Jake.
I
Yes,
am.
Jake,
I'm like talking and no one can hear.
We're just
I'm like-
ignoring you, Jake.
I know. I'm just
He's
like
censoring himself.
I'm like Morse code da 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 da, which is Morse code for WTF.
Yes.
I'm like ghosts. They're pesky things.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
So, have you heard of a story like this before? Of a phantom treasure, or anything similar?
Well, you know,
I was trying to think.
not. Well, so it's 1874. I don't know if this is like a timeline thing, but a lot of times with ghost hunters, you'll find we really, really focus on like the Victorian age on. So that would be like the 1880s up to the 1920s. And like that's the part we focus on. So when it comes to treasures, like you don't hear about that kind of anchor or fetter, which what we would call that's the bond that keeps the dead attached to the living's world. So a lot of times when you'll hear about residual hauntings from the Civil War and stuff, but like you don't really, when you think treasure, you think about the Caribbean, you think about the original explorers and everything, but not so much after. However, the California Gold Rush, Alaska Gold, like that is some legit stuff. Those hauntings, like if you're from Northern California, Sacramento and stuff, I would say that holds up to this day. But still, it's the 1850s on.
That's interesting. Well, you do hear stories about, some people walking into a room and, like that used to be an old Civil War. I think there was something about that in Kansas City, actually. One of the one of the old homes that was there was used for a hospital, and these two women, I think it was on the college, one of the colleges there. It was at Park College. Where the two women went downstairs into the basement, the elevator took them there, the door opened up, and the doctors were like working on someone, and they were like Civil War area. They were cutting off someone's leg, and it was just like they walk in there and they're like, what the hell? But the doctors actually, didn't they say, turned their heads and looked at them?
Wow.
Or was it a residual? I can't remember, but it was. So, something like that. We hear a lot of those stories, or hear stories where somebody walks into a room and they see this beautiful golden room with all these beautiful paintings. And they're like, where did this, this beautiful room, I didn't, like in an abandoned place, and they get their friends and they come back and all of a sudden it's just a shambles,
total
cobwebs.
residual.
Yeah. So total residual haunting. Yeah. You guys see a ghost?
Yeah. I had a friend.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, that just triggered a memory that I had a friend who claimed that her father, when his mother passed away, he was going about normal everyday stuff, turned and went into a room in his own home, and he saw a vision of his mother with a whole table setting in front of her, gorgeous, settings and everything, and food everywhere, and this glimmering light, and just it was just like, wow, embarrassing riches of all this. And then it kind of vanished. And it was like, well, obviously she didn't have that in real life, but yet this was being projected. So in a way is, that's interesting.
For heaven, maybe.
Yeah. Or just conveying to him that she's okay, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or he's not needing anything.
She's well fed.
She's well taken care of. Yeah. So
I'm from the Midwest. I like them well fed. So.
Oh, that's kind of nice, though. I mean, I like visions of like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Where you
I
go
mean,
in
and most people probably realize a lot of times ghosts and hauntings are not really terrifying things. Sure, they catch you off guard.
Yes.
But generally speaking,
Startle you, yeah.
yeah, if you have a link to the ghost, it's going to be positive.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if it's kind of outside your family, it's going to be neutral. Like when they talk about demons and dark
They
entities.
Hollywoodize it, yeah.
No, that's the movies and the ghost hunting shows.
Yeah.
I'll throw
Yeah.
some shade at the ghost hunting shows, though I
Yeah,
watch them all and
yeah.
I love them,
Yes.
and I totally love them. and
He
watch
does
them all.
love them. He has great reviews of all of them. If you ever want to know anything about any of the ghost hunting shows, Jake knows.
Just really their ghost hunting methods and technology.
Yes, he loves the tech. Yes.
But that is something that I have thought about quite a bit since we started the podcasting and hearing everyone's stories, and I belong to quite a few paranormal groups too, where you hear even more stories, and you just kind of come to realize that these ghosts, they used to be people, and if you did encounter them as people, it wouldn't be scary. Sure, it's weird if a grandpa's in your kitchen, but
Right.
but they were just people, and it's not all a vengeful spirit or some evil
Right.
entity coming to take your house away from you, that sort of thing. But yeah,
Well, that's what I always say. That's one thing I always say. Somebody thinks, "Oh my God, I have a demon. It's so evil things are happening." I was like, sometimes if a person is a jerk in life, they're probably going to be a jerk in death. It's one of those
Yep.
things. And
the other thing is, if they have a message, they have to use shock tactics, so you pay attention.
right.
Yeah.
sometimes they don't know how far they're taking it, I believe, and not really know how far, if they are scaring you or not.
Yeah.
But they have a message to give, and that's one thing we always ask on a lot of our investigations is, do you have a message for somebody? And we had one investigation where I asked that question and we got an answer of, I don't like how much she smokes. And it was sounded like an elderly man. I don't like how much he smokes.
Wow.
And the woman that owned the house, she smoked, maybe a few packs a day. And I kind of conveyed that, and she listened to the recording. She goes, that sounds a little bit like my grandfather. And then we had
Wow.
another one from him saying, I loved her blue prom dress. And I was like, so what color was your prom dress? She was like, it was blue. And
Wow. Fascinating.
and then after that, she never had anything else happen in her house. I don't know, he just wanted her to know she
Mhm.
smokes too much.
Yeah, maybe concerned about her health and that sort of thing.
No.
Wow.
Yeah. Fascinating.
That's great.
Yes,
Love stories like that.
Mm-hmm.
me too. It's like one of those things.
So guys, because we only have you for like another 10 minutes, I got questions on your next projects. Are you thinking about doing anything outside of podcasts? Like, are you going to show up at a conference? Do you have a
Yes. Do you
book?
book
As a
these
matter of
conferences?
fact.
We would love to know.
Scoop.
Well, we can't start small, right? Our official, we are based in Seattle, and our official first show is
Live show.
Live show. Ooh.
is going to be at the UK Game Expo in Birmingham, England.
Oh my
Wow.
I gotta
word.
book a
Packing
flight.
up the show and taking it to Birmingham.
Going over the pond.
Awesome. Oh, that sounds great.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
So is
which
this a one-time thing, or are you thinking about doing like a little tour with like at nice theaters or
Like,
big
what about
big
our
libraries,
CryptoCon?
which I could see you guys totally fitting into really big
Yes.
libraries?
Mm-hmm. Very big
Well,
old
we
libraries.
want to
Yes.
take it as far as we can go, right? We do have plans to go to Dragon Con this year.
Okay.
We're gonna examine it as we're presented with opportunities, but
Mhm.
we've had a few local Seattle meetups, including with Spooked in Seattle on Valentine's Day. That was amazing. And
That was
so
so
we
cool.
want to do local things. We want to do live shows. We would certainly love to tour, but again, it's a two-person production, so we're always looking to network and find people who are definitely passionate about helping us out in that area, because it's certainly something that we're interested in doing.
Mhm.
Do you have anything to add?
Oh, no, I think, no, you're doing great. You're doing great.
So guys, just let me do a plug for you.
Okay.
Odd Tonic does amazing content. If you're listening to us and you listen to them, then you know this. They have a pledge on their page that you can do a donation so that they can put more content and possibly go on the road and do shows with us.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you very much, Jake.
Yeah, we have a Patreon. Patreon/Odd Tonic is where, because we are listener supported, we are an independent podcast. And so that is certainly something we do not shy away from or turn away.
An independent podcast that does its best to sound like we are a derivative of NPR.
Yeah.
Like, you're beyond. Like, I hear your stuff and I'm thinking like Luminary. If you know Luminaries,
Oh, thank you
it's
very
like
much.
Hollywood crime.
Oh, yeah.
I
thank
put you on par with the, that's good stuff.
That is-
I'm not
that
plugging
is
it. Odd
a
Tonic's
wonderful
better.
compliment.
Yes,
I'm
Thank
plugging
you
it.
so
very
much.
good.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
I totally agree.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys are too
you're
nice.
So sweet.
Too nice.
Yeah, but we do plan to grow in those areas as much as we can, and this is something we've certainly challenged ourselves to make that happen this year, and we are exploring opportunities as they come in, and we just love to continue to grow that way, because again, it is about connecting with people, and so it's not just about us sitting in our parlor. We want to get out there and meet everyone and interact with them and hear them personally. Yeah.
Right, right.
Are you going to be at Crypticon?
We don't have a booth or a panel, but we will be there on Saturday to
Nice.
hobnob with the rest of the people. So we'll definitely,
Yay.
yeah, we'll
We should be there too.
Great. Yeah, that sort of thing. It's like, let's meet up then and
Yeah.
organize getting together.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
would be awesome.
Yay!
Also, they do have a lot of ghost conferences that actually would absolutely love
Very
you.
true.
I don't know if you've heard of the Oregon Ghost Conference in Seaside, Oregon, but it's going
Wow.
to be the end of March. I was trying to think 27th and 28th. We're going to be down there.
Oh, awesome.
And then they have the Port Gamble Ghost
Yeah.
Conference, which is
Oh,
another
yes,
really
in November.
nice.
Mm.
Yes.
Right.
Talk
Mhm.
about good ghost stories coming out of Port
Oh,
Gamble.
Oh, yes.
Mhm.
The Walker
One of my
Ames house.
favorite places.
Mhm.
Do you know that's one of the places I had my very first experience, paranormal experience, I should
Wow.
say,
I know
there
that.
in the Walker Ames house. Yep.
Mhm.
Opened my eyes because I was thinking everything was a bunch of, was just made up. And then,
Fabricated, right?
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
I totally put the Walker Ames house down because that's the first time I got like really great engagement with a ghost,
Oh, that's funny.
like moving things.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm.
So lots of stories. I was just saying you
Yes.
could do a live Odd Tonic out of the Port Gamble conference.
I would
You
love
know,
that. I would
Yeah.
love that.
that would be really fun. I'm sure he would love
Yeah,
to,
I'm sure
to
Pete
do
would be
that.
down with that. And they've got a
Yeah.
nice big facility it's at a casino. We'll deal with that.
Wait.
Cool.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, yeah. Jennifer's right. We really are pushing for getting our live show together this year, and in addition to England and Atlanta, Georgia, we are looking at going down to Austin. We've got a lot of listeners in Austin and the surrounding areas.
Yeah.
And absolutely, if there are conferences that our listeners think would be a good match for Odd Tonic, and certainly you guys, I wasn't aware of the Oregon conference. Shoot them our way. We would. It's our big goal this year to get out of the parlor and take the show on the road.
We're so heads down sometimes in the production of it that we don't have time to come up for air and actually research where we should be going. So there's a lot of unknown territory out there for us. So it never hurts to just have someone ping us and put it on our radar, because sometimes we just don't know.
It's your chance to tell Odd Tonic where to go.
Yes. We'll tell you where to go.
Very polite, geolocation specific
Yes.
information. Yes.
Exactly. Oh, that's wonderful. You guys have been so amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Paige, Maxwell Holechek, and Odd Tonic podcast. We absolutely love you. So thank you for being on our show. We really appreciate that. So
Oh, this has been
Thank you
so
very
much
much.
fun. Thank you
Yeah.
so
is there any
much.
other, any other, I guess you'd say, parting words that you'd like to say, or how people can get in touch with you and everything?
And plug.
Yes.
Plug.
Sure. Well, we've talked a lot about our listener submitted episodes. If you have a story, we would love to hear it. And you can reach us at the parlor at oddtonicsociety.com. And you can spell parlor with a U or not. We prefer the U.
Either spelling and parlor is fine. And we have a website. You can check us out at oddtonicsociety.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Odd Tonic Society. And when you're on our Facebook page, you can also find our group, our community there as well.
And as we said, we are on YouTube. We just do a search for Odd Tonic. We'll pop
I
right up.
dropped the link.
Oh,
I dropped the
great.
link.
And
Thank you, Jeff.
subscribe, yes.
And your shop.
And subscribe to
because
there,
you got
yes.
great swag.
Oh,
Thank you.
It's because we're in
Perfect.
Seattle and getting the hoodie.
Yeah.
oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you,
I'll
thank you.
plug the Patreon one more time because money is always nice.
Yes, it
it's
is.
just patreon.com/oddtonic if you want to donate, and we have perks on there as well. Like we thank listeners by name, whatever, or their nickname or their pet's name or their business name during our listener episodes, our parlor stories. So people can have a little plug there as part, being part of the podcast, that sort of thing. And can you think of any more links?
It was. I want to make sure I got it right in the chat. Patreon.com/oddtonicsociety.
No, just Odd Tonic.
Okay, let me correct. It's about the money. We got to correct. It's about the money. Okay, now it's corrected.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm a capitalist. Whatever.
But you guys have been fantastic. Thank you so much for having us on the show.
Yeah. This has
Whenever
been...
you have a new project coming up, let us know.
Okay.
we can
Yes,
get it out
please.
there.
All
Okay,
right.
definitely.
Yes, we would be happy.
And feel free if you have boogeyman stories, please. We'd
Oh,
love to hear it.
okay.
Put it in
Love
our
to
segment.
Have those too.
Yeah. In thinking back on it, I don't think that we've gotten any user submitted stories that sort of fall into that realm, but we could certainly hit our page and our group up.
Yes.
I'm
that
sure.
would be
I'm sure there are folks holding out on us.
Yeah.
We'll shake
Oh.
the trees for you.
Yeah, or they just don't think to mention it until someone suggests it. You just never know.
Mm-hmm. That would be awesome.
Yeah, like the one lady who her aunt told her a story, and she was going to write a story on it, a short story, and she went back to her aunt, and her aunt just doesn't even want to talk about it because to this day it still scares her so bad.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear that one.
Oh, that's a good one.
And they say that a lot of the boogeyman deal there comes from the Zulu and another tribe in that area.
Oh.
So a whole lot of cultural innuendos there as well.
Pretty
Yeah.
I can't wait to see them.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we can't wait to hear those stories once you have
Oh
them.
yeah.
For sure.
Perfect.
So then we've come to the end of the show. I'm sorry,
No.
guys.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's we got time limits and stuff.
We do
But
not. You just
Not
want
necessarily. We could keep going if you want to go.
Yeah.
Like we could keep going. Like I got
Hour
a limited
12.
plan. But
3 weeks later.
So this is the show now.
Yes.
it's like 8 a.m. and everybody's like,
It's like, but wait, there's more.
And another time.
Save it for the sequel. Save it for the sequel.
Exactly.
Then
Yes.
the series.
Exactly.
Like this is a serial. We'll create like a comic book limited series here. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Cliffhangers and things.
Yes, with cliffhangers and everything. This is our cliffhanger. Odd Tonic will be back. Odd Tonic Society will be back.
That's
Whenever you'd like.
right.
With more ghostly.
Awesome.
I think for
Thank
some
you
mad
so much.
scientist debauchery.
Yeah.
Steampunk mad science.
Wow.
So,
So
all
when
right, our listeners I would like you to go to the oddtonicsociety.com page, submit ghost stories if you have them, or listen to them, subscribe, do the whole deal there. Now, I want your boogeyman type stories or your creepy, creeped out stories. Please get a hold of us. Website, Facebook page, the whole thing. It's all Mystic Moon Cafe. Look us up. You'll find it. Or mysticmooncafe@gmail.com.
Perfect.
Submit.
Now, I will be back. I will be back Sunday with my Circle of Witches of the Witch's Cauldron, and we will be going over witchcraft then and now, and maybe some tarot readings and that type of thing as well. So,
Sweet.
all right, that's what I got.
June.
I just wishing everyone a fabulous week, and we will talk to you next Wednesday night. And who is next Wednesday night?
Harvey Althaus.
That's right. Oh, that's going to be
he's
fun.
A remote viewer and the one who did the Netflix Haunted series. He was like the third story in it, The Children of the Well. And I believe he has a couple others out there. So just a very nice man, very neat man. Probably talk a lot about how he thinks that children with the stories should be encouraged rather than discouraged about such things, not just poo-pooed away, oh, you're dreaming or whatever. So I was very impressed listening to his show.
Very cool.
We'll be tuning into that. That sounds fabulous.
Yay! Thank you.
Let's see. So
yes,
for
Jake?
the ghost hunting side, tomorrow night at Spooked in Seattle, we do have a private team, a ghost hunt. Say that a lot. A ghost hunt. So I might have some evidence to put up on ghostly activities, which is where I document our ghost hunts. And then we do have an excursion to the Stanwood Hotel and Saloon over the weekend,
Saturday.
which is notoriously
very haunted place.
Old West Haunt. So hopefully I'll get some evidence on that one to post.
Yes.
And with that, gentle listeners, again, thank you, Odd Tonic Society.
Yes,
Jennifer
thank
Maxwell for being on. Appreciate it greatly. It's been a wonderful time, and we love your podcast. Everyone else, you love their podcast too.
Don't already go back and go and find it.
Yes, go back and listen on their website or through their many pod hosts, actually, podcatchers that you got. But make sure you subscribe. Amazing episodes. And with that, our outro track for tonight is Lonesome by Wyatt and the Holy Spooks Fest.
No.
Feast of
May
Fear.
I?
Yeah, did you?
Correct
Because
you?
I'm just like going off what the thing said.
It's Lonesome Wyatt and the Spooks.
Feast of Fear.
Crap. Feast of Fear. Thank you. Yeah.
Here's what I got. Okay. It's really long and it's late, people.
Yeah.
Well, not so much on the West Coast, but it's a wonderful atmospheric track. And with that,
Thank you all.
thank you and have a good night.
Good
night.
Good night.
Night.
Are we mute?
Word.